The Greek gods. Even if you've never looked for them, they've appeared in something you've watched or played. From God of War, to Hades, to Percy Jackson, to Record of Ragnarok, to literally hundreds of more series. They are without a doubt the most popular and well-known pantheon of gods in all of history. Just like any other work of fiction, they can be power scaled. So today, I thought I'd put the gods of Mount Olympus up against the gold standard of power scaling. Could the main 12 gods of Mount Olympus defend the Earth from a Saiyan invasion consisting of Vegeta and Nappa? The only way to find out is to get started, but please make sure to like and subscribe to support the channel and know when new videos come out. As I've talked about the power scaling of the Saiyan saga plenty of times, I think it's only fair that we talk about the power scaling of the Greek gods first. If I didn't make it clear, we're talking about the 13 main gods of Greek mythology from the original myths themselves. The big three of Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, along with the other gods of Mount Olympus of Hera, Demeter, Aphrodite, Athena, Artemis, Apollo, Ares, Hephaestus, Hermes, and it's a toss-up between either Hestia or Dionysus depending on the interpretation and which myth you're looking at, but ultimately, it's not going to matter. A lot of these series I mentioned earlier that adapt these myths add their own material that drastically change the capabilities of the gods, having them range to potentially beyond universal in series like God of War and Saint Seiya, while other series are far less impressive than that. Even with the original sources of Greek myth that have been preserved, there are obviously inconsistencies and many issues regarding translations not agreeing with each other, but in my research, I hope to give a wide-sweeping and hopefully nuanced view as possible. But again, we're talking about several thousand-year-old stories here. To begin, unfortunately, most of the Olympians don't have any direct feats by themselves and are arguably fodder combat-wise compared to some of the others, leading to them being pretty much a non-factor in the grand scheme of things. Most importantly, though, is that every single god is inferior to Zeus by a large margin, arguably to the point where he could solo the rest of them if he so chose, to the point where he is all-powerful in comparison to the rest of the gods. Thus, by establishing the feats of weaker gods, we can establish where Zeus is casually by extension. So, for a pretty easy baseline for top-tier gods, myths repeatedly describe Poseidon as having flooded the entire Earth, creating an ocean that, quote, did not have a shore. This easily puts him at high multi-continental level. This is further made consistent by other high-tier gods, as his brother Hades is stated to shake the Earth itself 3 times just by shaking his head, which, once again, can be calculated as a multi-continental feat, depending on how strong the earthquakes shaking the Earth are. But we can do better than this multi-continental baseline. In a battle with Apollo, who thus should also be maybe relative to this level, it stated that it was a very real possibility that Poseidon was going to lever out the gear of the entire universe to the point where his water would burst open the Earth itself and flood Tartarus. So does this mean that the gods are all universe busters? Not necessarily. You see, it's important to understand that these myths are, surprisingly, kind of old, and that the people who made these stories and using these terms did not have the same level of understanding that we did. So when they say that these characters are universal, it's from their understanding of what the universe is. In ancient Greece, Earth was essentially thought to be the center of the universe, and that stars were not objects identical to the sun, but points of light that sat along a firmament at the edge of what essentially was the solar system. Well, let's just say that even the best understanding that the ancient Greeks had of the solar system was really off. For example, they thought the sun was only about 6 times larger than the Earth, and some of them even thought it was smaller than the Earth, while in reality, it's more than 100 times larger. They also thought it was far closer to the Earth, making the scale of the entire solar system, and thus the universe, only a couple million miles across in total. Now, I've seen some people say that the Greeks thought the universe was about 79 million miles across, but either way, this means that these universal statements actually really translate to the gods being anywhere from star level to large star level at power, if they actually are universal. Some argue that these feats are still universal because in some myths, universe is referred to as infinite. I think it's very likely that this is just calling it very large, as even just oceans and the planet itself in these same stories or other ones are referred to as boundless, and that in the same myths, universe is described as having very specifically 4 measurable corners, a center, and a shape that can be replicated, which lends credence to the idea that it is not actually infinite. Still, I do want to focus on Zeus and his power specifically, because he's kind of just him. Like I said before, he consistently is stated both by himself and by others as being easily above every single god combined, including those not just on Mount Olympus like Gaia and Uranus. Pretty much every feat I've mentioned before of the lesser gods, Zeus has recreated and then some. He's flooded the earth, shook the earth with his lightning, in his battle with the giants, shook the heavens and staggered Atlas, the same guy who is capable of carrying the weight of that universe. In one myth, he defeated both the monster Typhon and Gaia essentially at the same time. Gaia being the entity that essentially created the universe and everything in it. Zeus has also outright beaten his father Kronos, who in the past had beaten his father Uranus, who is the living embodiment of the sky. Even blatantly, Zeus's thunderbolts are described as being capable of burning everything in the world down to its poles, according to some translations of Roman poems, which did technically come after, but I thought I'd mention it. As for Hack's abilities, it would be impossible to list everything the gods can do. They all have various kinds of elemental manipulation, can shapeshift, and many have degrees of illusion creation, mind manipulation, and soul manipulation. The Olympians are all also essentially immortal, with most godly entities in Greek myth really only being capable of being sealed rather than being outright killed. With all this being said, would they be able to stop the Prince of all Saiyans from conquering the planet? I don't think anyone would disagree that during the Saiyan saga, Vegeta is absolutely at the bare minimum a planet buster. Multiple characters tens and dozens of times weaker than him have destroyed the moon, and arguably threatened to destroy the planet. The real question becomes, how far beyond planetary can we get this Vegeta? There are a few metas. With his power level of 18,000, Vegeta would be at least a planet buster almost 2 times over, based on El Manga Legendario's statement, then 10,000 can blow up a planet. Beyond that though, Vegeta surpassed his father as a child, who was capable of blowing up 3 planets simultaneously. Assuming that all these planets are just the size of Earth, which is considered a small planet by Dragonball standards, this attack from King Vegeta is dwarf star level in power. Vegeta would likely be around twice as strong as this in base, as King Vegeta's power level was somewhere unquantifiably greater than Bardock's, who was almost 10,000. However, in his Grade 8 form, Vegeta would multiply this power level by another 10 times, putting his power level at 180,000 and his strength at arguably small star level. Of course, the other Saiyans like Nappa and Raditz would just quantifiably scale off this level of power with their own power levels, with Nappa being at 4 and 40,000 in his forms, with Raditz being at approximately 1.5 and 15,000 respectively. Of course, in the case of especially early Dragon Ball, none of the Saiyans have much in the degree of hacks besides the basic property that ki control at high level brings, like flight and ki blast that can destroy matter on the atomic level. For speed, at a bare minimum, all 3 Saiyans would be faster than light, as they would be faster than the top tiers in original Dragon Ball multiple times over, which each have multiple arguable light speed feats, and it's really whichever you want to choose to say their light speed. Either way, the Saiyans at full power, especially Vegeta, would be reaching speeds hundreds of times faster than light. So, with all that being said, will the Saiyans conquer Olympus, or fall to the might of the Pantheon? Like the title of this video alludes to, pretty much everyone besides Vegeta and Zeus are largely irrelevant. Nappa and Vegeta should easily defeat any of the gods who don't in some way scale similarly to Zeus, immediately removing more than half the roster. Aside from Zeus though, the only god who's arguably at their star level of power is Poseidon, and maybe Hera and Hades depending on some interpretations. Even then though, there's only a chance they're at this level, while Zeus has direct feats and scaling that put him there. So really, who wins this? Zeus or Vegeta? Zeus does actually have the advantage in power, being at his potential peak of large star level, while Vegeta at his peak is only small star level. However, Vegeta is massively faster than Zeus. The gods simply don't have faster than light scaling, as things like time frames and distance quantifications don't exactly exist in these myths. At best, they might be relativistic using things like the movement of the sun or other celestial bodies, but that is a big might. The gods do also have an advantage in hacks like their immortality, but By that same token, these myths don't exactly take into account how the gods could handle an atomizing ki blast when the most powerful thing they could imagine at the time was a bolt of lightning. However, this analysis has been of great ape Vegeta versus Zeus. This power gap becomes even larger if Vegeta is just in his base form, putting Zeus's strength another 10 times higher than the prince's. It's very likely that while Vegeta could blitz and fly around Zeus faster than all of the gods, a single bolt of lightning is absolutely erasing anything that would remain of the Saiyan race. So there you have it. Even when you take my most critical interpretation of the power of the Greek gods, while the rest of the pantheon might fall short, Zeus would be able to defeat them, at least before they unlock Super Saiyan. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and as always, let me know how I was wrong in the comments down below. See ya!